Welcome to Deep or Nothing with Miss Daisy O, the podcast where we explore the art of deep thinking. Join me as we dive into thought-provoking conversations that challenge the surface and uncover the profound truths that shape our lives. Let's go deep, or not at all. Hi, hi. Welcome to another episode of Deep or Nothing with Miss Daisy. I'm always so excited dropping new episodes weekly, and that's because it's just always beautiful and interesting to have to dive into this amazing thing called the mind. One thing I must say right now, one thing I want you to know right now at this point in our relationship is that I live for moments like this. I'm your host, Miss Daisy, and today's episode takes us into a topic we've all encountered in one form or another: trust. Specifically, navigating trust in human relationships from the perspective of a deep thinker. Now, trust is one of those things that can feel fragile, yet foundational. Simple, yet complicated. But for deep thinkers, trust becomes even more nuanced. It's not just about whether or not someone is reliable, it's about intention, alignment, consistency, and emotional transparency. And we'll be unpacking all that today. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into it. Let's start with why trust is such a heavy topic for deep thinkers. When you think deeply, you often analyze more layers than the average person. You're not just looking at someone's actions, you're examining motives, past patterns, and how consistent they are in different areas of their life. It's always fun to do this, at least for me, and I always just find fulfillment in thinking like this. So for deep thinkers, trust isn't built on a single act of reliability. It's more like, you can call it a mosaic of experiences that create a broader picture of who that person is. And that's where it gets tricky. Because the deeper you think, the more likely you are to pick on inconsistencies that others might overlook. For example, let's say you have a friend who's always there for you when it's convenient for them, but then they bail out when it's not. A surface level thinker might just chalk it up to life being busy, but a deep thinker might question the integrity of that person. You start to think about questions like, is this friend really trustworthy? Are they reliable in a time of real need? And that one question spirals into a deeper analysis of your entire friendship. One of the greatest challenges for deep thinkers when it comes to trust is what I like to call the trust overthinking paradox. You see, the same analytical mind that allows you to see beneath the surface of people's behavior can also cause you to second guess that trust once it's established. You start to see potential betrayals that haven't even happened. You run through what ifs like a mental chess game. You're trying to predict every possible outcome. And the problem with overthinking trust is that it can erode the foundation of even the healthiest relationships. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you have a partner and they tell you they're going to meet up with an old friend. For most people, this would be no big deal, right? But for a deep thinker, especially one who's been hurt before, the mind might go to, what if they're hiding something? What if there's more to this friendship than they're letting on? Before you know it, a harmless situation becomes a point of tension. Not because there's anything to worry about, but because you've mentally walked down every negative possibility. The challenge here is learning how to balance your deep thinking with reality. Yes, I understand that it's important to question and analyze, but it's equally important to not let your mind sabotage the trust that you've worked so hard to build. If you're constantly questioning people's intentions, you create an environment of distrust that would in turn harm your relationships. Let's talk about vulnerability for a moment. I'm particularly passionate about this one. Trust and vulnerability are deeply intertwined. But for deep thinkers, being vulnerable can feel like exposing your most guarded self. I've learned this over time. Being vulnerable is like opening a vault of emotions, thoughts, and fears that you've spent years protecting. And the deeper you think, the more aware you are of how that vulnerability can be exploited. Now, in this part of the world, let's use a Nigerian context where strength, self-reliance are often emphasized. Being vulnerable can feel like a weakness. We are normally taught to be strong, to handle things on our own, and to man up or woman up. But trust doesn't thrive in a space where vulnerability is absent. A lot of us don't get this concept right. You can't totally trust if you don't become vulnerable. Trust requires you to open up. And for deep thinkers, I understand that that requires going beyond the surface level exchanges and allowing yourself to be seen and understood, even when it's uncomfortable. It's being okay with the fact that your vulnerabilities might make others uncomfortable or that they might not fully understand you right away. Now, let's face it, trust will be broken at some point. Whether it's intentional or accidental, someone is going to let you down. The question isn't if trust will be broken, it's how do you rebuild it? For deep thinkers, rebuilding trust can feel almost impossible. Why is that? Because you're aware of every detail that contributed to that betrayal. Whether it's a lie, a broken promise, or a breach of confidence, you replay that situation in your mind and analyze every facet of it. I mean, many times I would think about the words a person had said to me in the past or the promises that they had made to me in the past. And I would wonder why or how easy it was for them to break that promise or go back on their word. And this makes the process of forgiving and rebuilding trust a lot more complex. Let's take a very simple example. Imagine you've lent money to a close friend with the promise that they'll pay back in a week, but they don't. And instead of coming to you with an explanation, they avoid you. For most people, the frustration would be about the money. For a deep thinker, it's about the breach in trust. Why didn't they tell me earlier? What does this say about their character? Can I trust them again with something more serious? It's no longer about the money. It's about the principle behind the action. I want to quickly run you through the psychology behind trust. I'll just brush through a few things around trust. So at its core, yeah, trust involves this cognitive evaluation. Basically, what the brain is doing is processing and analyzing a person's past behavior, their body language, their verbal cues, just to make predictions about their future actions. So trust would eventually build when we see patterns of consistency, when people do what they say they'll do. Now, the brain engages in this risk reward calculation when we decide to trust. What we're doing is assessing the potential benefits of trusting someone versus the risk of the betrayal. So, if the brain sees more reward than risk, we're more likely to trust. I read recently that the risk assessment that the brain is doing is rooted in the prefrontal cortex, and that's the part that handles decision making and social interactions. One thing to also know and understand is that emotion plays a significant role in trust. People are more likely to trust those with whom they have emotional connections. Positive emotions like empathy, warmth, and affection encourage trust. In fact, the oxytocin, known as the trust hormone, is released when we engage in bonding activities like touch, conversations, or shared experiences. So what happens is our defense mechanisms lowers and it makes us more willing to trust others. On the flip side, emotions like fear, anger, or disappointment erode trust. If someone has violated our trust before, negative emotions can override the brain's rational calculations, and this makes it harder to trust again, even when the logical reasons to trust are there. So, developmental psychologists argue that a child's relationship with their primary caregivers forms the basis for how they trust others. So if caregivers like parents and guardians, if they were consistent, if they were reliable, if they were nurturing, the child develops secure attachment, leading to a general sense of trust in others. On the other hand, if a child experiences all the negative, things like neglect, inconsistency, betrayal, they may develop insecure attachment, and this would lead to difficulty in trusting people later in life. So these early experiences set a foundation for future relationships. In professional environments, trust between team members, managers, and organizations determines the overall success of a company. And that's why employees need to trust their leadership to make decisions in their best interest, while leaders must also trust their teams to perform tasks effectively. Psychologically, right, our brains are wired to remember negative experiences more vividly than positive ones. It's called negative bias. This means that a single betrayal can outweigh years of trustworthy behavior in someone's mind. And rebuilding trust requires time, it requires vulnerability, like I said earlier, and consistent behavior. I would love to say again that vulnerability is at the heart of trust, serving as that key ingredient in forming deep, meaningful relationships. If you don't get it, I'd love to explain that vulnerability is the willingness to open yourself or anybody just open up to potential harm, rejection, or disappointment. And this exposure of our inner selves, our thoughts, emotions, weaknesses, is essential for building trust because trust inherently involves risk. How does vulnerability play a role in trust? When we trust someone, we're taking a risk by letting them into our personal space, either emotionally, physically, or socially. Being vulnerable means acknowledging that the person we trust has the power to either uphold or break that trust. And without vulnerability, trust cannot exist because we would constantly be shielding ourselves from any potential harm or rejection. And I always say that you can't completely trust, you can't completely love if you don't give yourself away. And giving yourself away means exposing yourself, it means being vulnerable. Vulnerability also allows for authentic connections and relationships. By showing your true self, your fears, your hopes, and flaws, you allow the other person to do the same. And this mutual openness creates a deeper bond, one that's rooted in acceptance and not pretension. In both personal and professional relationships, emotional intimacy thrives on vulnerability. Whether it's admitting mistakes, sharing personal stories, or expressing feelings, these acts of vulnerability foster closeness. Emotional intimacy, in turn, strengthens trust as it reassures the other person that you are willing to share parts of yourself that you wouldn't with just anyone. When one person is vulnerable, it often encourages others to be vulnerable in return. It is crucial in developing trust. By being open and honest, you give the other person permission to let their guard down as well. When someone is vulnerable, it opens doors to empathy. When you share personal struggles, fears, or mistakes, you allow others to see your humanity. I mean, you're just human. You're not an angel. You're not perfect. You have flaws. You have things that you're good at. You have things that you're poor at. You have times when you're like the most annoying person on earth. And there are times when you're just an amazing person. Being vulnerable allows you to show all the parts of yourself, and your person can relate with you when they see you. And this in turn leads to a stronger connection and a higher level of trust. I mean, I will trust a person who I can relate with. I would trust a person who I know can make mistakes. I want to trust a person who I know can mess up so badly and still admit it, and then we walk through it together. Deep or nothing with Miss Daisy. Vulnerability signals that it is safe to be open. In an environment where people are guarded or defensive, trust cannot flourish. When someone is vulnerable, they create a space where honesty is welcomed and people feel secure to express themselves without fear of judgment. And this sense of safety is so beautiful, like it's so pivotal to building strong trust in relationships. I always look forward to being that person that people around me or friends around me can say, "Oh Daisy, you're my safe space," or "Daisy, I'm just very comfortable talking with you. I just feel safe anytime I'm around you." That is always my desire when I meet people because there's just this beauty that comes with being vulnerable. It's a powerful driver of trust. So, how do deep thinkers navigate trust in a healthy way? Let's break it down with some practical tips. One of the best ways to manage trust is by setting clear boundaries. Knowing when you draw the line helps you communicate your expectations clearly to every other person around you, and it also avoids misunderstandings. And it also helps avoid misunderstandings. For example, if you value honesty above all else, make sure the people close to you know this. It's easy to let overthinking take control, but practice giving people the benefit of the doubt, especially when there's no strong evidence to suggest otherwise. What I'm saying is, don't let small inconsistencies blow up into full blown trust crisis. Ooh, this one. Trust thrives on communication. If something feels off, Talk about it instead of letting your mind spiral. Whether it's a friend, a partner, a coworker, a church member, sometimes a conversation can clear up what overthinking complicates. I would say every other time, like this life no hard. Now we just they make them hard. And that's because we refuse to communicate. Sometimes we communicate, but we're not communicating effectively. So let's learn how to say the right things and talk right. I want everybody to know, the male folk especially, hi guys, being vulnerable is not a weakness. In fact, it is a strength. You can't build trust without taking the risk of being open. Whether it's in friendships, relationships, or even professional settings, being authentic allows people to trust the real you, not a guarded version. We also should understand that no one is perfect. Listen, that mess up, right? That could be you. While some breaches of trust are irreparable, others can be forgiven. So let's learn to distinguish between someone who made a mistake and someone who has fundamentally broken your trust. It's okay to rebuild, but it's also okay to move on. Trust is one of the most challenging yet rewarding aspects of human relationships, and for deep thinkers, it requires navigating layers of emotions, thoughts, and actions that can sometimes feel overwhelming. I am a witness. But remember, trust does not have to be perfect to be valuable. It grows in moments of vulnerability, open conversation, and the willingness to forgive. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I am encouraging you to reflect on how you navigate trust in your own relationships. Ask yourself, be honest. Be honest about it. Are you overthinking it? Are you setting healthy boundaries? Are you even allowing yourself to be vulnerable in meaningful ways? Now, I'm not saying that you should overdo it or underdo it. Try to find the balance. I want to believe that self-awareness is one thing that you're also striving for. When you're aware of your own person, of how you operate, how you function, what gets to you, what your limits are, what your triggers are, it's very easy to know how to give yourself to the people around you in the right amount. Having said all of that, I must also say thank you so very much for tuning into this episode of the podcast Deep or Nothing. Be sure to follow, turn on the notification if you're enjoying the content, share it with a friend. And I would be very honored if you keep coming back here. I'll catch you next time as we continue to dive deeper into life's most thought-provoking topics. Until then, keep thinking deeply and living authentically. Bye, friend.
Explore the art of deep thinking with Miss Daisy O.